Saturday, UFC Vancouver. The top part of this card is just real solid, Joe. Like, the prelims leave a lot to be desired. You got Austin Hubbard minus 145 against Kyle Prepolek, a plus 125. Luis Smoka, a minus 220. Ryan McDonald, a plus 180. You have Chaz Skelly, a plus 120 against Jordan Griffin, a minus 140. You have Brad Katona looking to rebound, a minus 165 against Hunter Azure, a plus 145. Cole Smith, a plus 110. Miles Johns, a minus 130. Then you've got some better names on the prelims. Augusto Sakai, a minus 115 against Marcin Tybura, a minus 115. And then you also have Andrew Sanchez, a big plus 250 against Marvin Vettori, a minus 300. So the prelims, not great at all. A lot of pick'ems on this show, a lot of close lines on this show. Andrew Sanchez and Marvin Vettori stands out to me because that's another situation where I think it's maybe the result is right and all that, but Andrew Sanchez isn't exactly a scrub or anything. He's looked very good of late, I thought. And like the fight against Barry Alt and the win against Marcus Perez, he really grinded those out. He's had a couple of really good runs. He looked good on The Ultimate Fighter, but he ran into Anthony Smith and Ryan James. That's one that I would probably put 5 on because why not? Other than that, there's not a lot of lines that are like wide out there that are catching my eyes, especially on this prelim show. Sakai and Tybura, minus 105 and minus 115, probably about right where it should be because it's hard to guess that one. What do you think of these prelim fights?
Well, the Sakai-Tybura fight, that's almost a pick'em, right? Like it's that close, and you're right, it could go either way. I think it's going to be actually a good fight. I just think it sucks that Marvin Vettori is a minus 300. I wish he was a plus 300. Put money on him, but he's a fantastic fighter. This is a guy that went the distance with the interim champ in Israel Adesanya, and of course he was out for a while with injury. So everyone watching right now and probably listening later on, Vettori is a guy at middleweight that we should be paying attention to. Forget the stupid Italian bias that I may have. Yes, I know he's Italian. I'm just saying he's a fantastic fighter. I think he's got skills, and I do think he's underappreciated. I do think he's going to surprise a lot of people. The Smolka-Ryan McDonald fight at plus 180. Ryan McDonald, I think you got 5 on that one.
Yeah, if I got it, because usually I take 3 no matter what, or at least 3 for the weekend. I like to do 3 in case somebody wants to do some wild-ass parlay or something and then blame me for it afterwards. But, yeah, that would be a close one, too, because Luis Smoka has had some consistency issues in the past. But then I look at this main card, Joe, and it's a good main card. Like, as far as what I think quality fights could be or relevant fights, Jim Crute, a minus 115, Misha Cirkunov, a minus 105. This is a real good fight in the light heavyweight division. Jim Crute is a guy that I look to really step up in this division and do good things. And I think that Cirkunov is the right kind of opponent for him because, hey, worst case scenario, Jim Crute doesn't win this. He's not undefeated anymore. And Misha Cirkunov, a guy who the UFC re-signed and has skidded big time, lost 3 of 4, gets back on track. But Jim Crute, I have winning this one. He's looked really good since that Dana White Contender Series win. He was a guy who wasn't really finishing his fights as he got into the UFC and then has stepped in and just beaten everybody. Paul Craig, Sam Alvey, Chris Berchier. The Alvey win, finishing Alvey in under 2-3 minutes, that one stood out to me. I got him winning this fight. How do you see it going?
The Alvey, wasn't the Alvey one where Sam took that on short notice?
Yeah, but I mean, Sam
it's
Alvey.
It's still a fantastic, yeah.
Sam Alvey.
Yeah. Jim Crute's
he's as ready to fight on short notice as he is on 3 months' notice.
That's true. Very true. Jimmy's undefeated. I mean, you tell me, is Misha not on thin ice?
He's got to be. He's got to be.
3 of 4?
Losing 3 of 4? Got to be.
Yeah, and then you lose this, it's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So the pressure is on Misha Cirkunov to win this fight, and it's also in Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Him being from the Toronto region. A lot of pressure on Misha, and maybe he takes that pressure and turns it into something, hones it in and turns it into a fantastic performance. But then you and I will label him, the Uriah Hall at 205. We just don't know what to expect. The Michael Johnson. We don't know what's going to happen with this guy fight to fight. So I'm kind of leaning towards Jimmy Crute in this fight. But if Misha pulls it off, I wish he would, to be honest with you, being a Canadian and a guy that I know. But it's tough, man. It's tough to say which. I don't know what's going on with Misha.
Beat my coach to get into the UFC, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Funny you mentioned Uriah Hall. He's a plus 180 against Antonio Carlos Jr. Shoeface. At plus 180, I gotta put 5 on Uriah Hall just because of the unpredictability of it. He's won 2 of his last 3, but has had trouble getting in the cage. First fight this year. Shoeface lost a few months ago against Ian Heinisch. I didn't think that would happen. I thought that he would mop the floor with Ian Heinisch. I don't expect anybody to mop the floor with Uriah Hall. I do expect some people to beat him. I expect him to lose to some people, but also I expect situations like the Gegard Musashi fight to happen. And as we have seen, when Uriah Hall pulls the trigger, he almost always wins, Joe. Almost always. When he pulls the trigger. It's just a matter of getting that to happen. I mean, look at his wins. How many wins does he have in the UFC via decision, Joe?
I'm going to go with what is 500, Alex?
One.
Thiago Santos.
Thiago Santos. Otherwise, he finishes people. Sometimes, I mean, here's the thing. Sometimes when he pulls the trigger, he doesn't win. But when he doesn't pull the trigger, he never wins. Then you have Shoeface, who he'll drag you down, he'll put it in the hooks, and he'll choke you. You have to watch the rear naked choke for him. That's his go-to. That's his bread and butter, and he is exceptional at it. I'm not confident that Uriah Hall can get out of it if he's got the hooks in on the back. So I'm probably going Shoeface here. But at that line and with the other betting lines on this card, I got to put 5 on Uriah Hall just in case.
I like the just in case bets. Those are always my favorite. I think Shoeface does emerge victorious. At who's the better wrestler here? Uriah Hall or Antonio Carlos Jr.
Yeah.
Or who's the better takedown artist? Right? Who's got better takedown defense? So as long as Carlos can or Shoeface can avoid getting tagged by the monster that is Uriah Hall, and this fight goes to the ground, I'm not saying you get your stopwatch out and just click and see how long it takes for him to submit Uriah Hall, but there's a huge advantage, in my opinion, with Shoeface on the ground versus Uriah Hall. And Uriah Hall, if you compare Uriah Hall's stand-up versus Shoeface's and Shoeface's ground game versus Uriah Hall's, I think the big discrepancy and the favor goes into Shoeface's corner. I think he gets the fight down on the ground. I think he emerges victorious. But like you said, you got to put 5 on Uriah Hall because just in case he lands something absolutely insane that'll send that arena into absolute pandemonium. So you just never know. But I'm leaning towards Shoeface in this fight.
Talk about a blast from the past. Todd Duffee, a plus 100 against Jeff Hughes, a minus 120. There are a lot of you watching this who have no clue who Todd Duffee is, and that's because he hasn't fought since 2015. He has taken just years of absence, 3 times, due to injury, due to tragedy, all kinds of stuff. 10 years ago, Joe, after he beat Tim Hague in 7 seconds, he was a 23-year-old prospect that everybody was looking at like, whoa, is he going to be the next big thing? And he wasn't. He had that fight against Mike Russell that was just unbelievable, that Russell came back and beat him, and Alistair Overeem mopped the floor with him on New Year's Eve. And then he disappeared. He disappeared for a year and a half. He started to fight in Super Fight League, and it's like, okay, well, he's back in the UFC. He fought Phil DeFries. He dominated and won that fight, and that was a good win back then too. Then he didn't fight for 2 more years. He beat Anthony Hamilton, did it impressively, looked like he was back on track, and then he fought once in 2015 and got his ass whipped by Frank Mir. We have not seen him since. They tried to book him in 2017. Duffee had to withdraw. 33 is still young at heavyweight, but the sad reality is a decade has been wasted of this guy's career, just flushed down the tube. And he couldn't help it. It's not his fault. It's physical stuff. It's It's a lot of health-related stuff, and he's facing a guy that wants to get his first UFC win. We don't see a lot of situations like Todd Duffee in MMA or the UFC, Joe.
He would be fantastic, quote-unquote, new blood to this division if he can just start reeling off some fights here.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. A fun fact about that Mike Russell fight at UFC 114, we interviewed Todd Duffee that week leading up to the event. And when I was connected with him and we were just shooting the breeze saying, listen, we want to do this and get this, and do you think you have time for a quick interview? He's like, look, I'm just going with my girlfriend right now to grab a bite to eat. Reaches into his pocket, gives me his hotel room key.
Oh,
he
wow.
goes, go there, set it up. We'll see you there in an hour. Walked into his room. We just set up everything. Did a fantastic interview. We were looking forward to his fight, and then he gets KO'd in the third round. We were not expecting that at all.
Not to be morbid or anything, but we're talking about him being new blood, and his breakout win was against a guy who died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that win was a decade ago. And upon his return, there's been nothing that has indicated that he's not capable of that. But I feel like he has to win. He'll get another fight no matter what if he wants one. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could take another 3 years off and get another fight, I think. But
yeah, and listen, overall he's a great guy, but it's just been a rough go for him in his mixed martial arts career. Hopefully he's been making some money somewhere. But yeah, it's one of those things where he wins and it could start. Well, anyone at heavyweight really, but I think he's marketable. Look at him. I think he's a marketable guy, right? And I think he could do great in this division. The problem is his age is not on his side, but it's the heavyweight division. And if you can get that footwork on point and launch those strikes, you could cause a lot of damage at above 205 pounds.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I don't know what the guy looks like these days.
Good point.
He could look like Mark Hunt for all I know.
Well, for all we know, that a lot of these fights were pre-USADA. Not accusing him of anything. I'm just saying.
Nikita Krylov, a -120 against Glover Teixeira, a +100. I am putting 5 on it. Not only that, I will put 5. I will go as far as to put 5 on Teixeira, a +150 inside the distance. There is no prop listed for submission. If you find one, I am putting 5 on Glover Teixeira via submission. Okay, Nikita Krylov has shown glimpses of brilliance and glimpses of ignorance. The guy can be a wrecking ball. I don't know how he beats Glover Teixeira, even with Glover being 40 next month. Because here's the thing. I don't think Nikita is better than Ian Cutelaba. I really don't. And I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh on Nikita Krylov, but Joe, I see so many things in this guy's game, and I'm like, how does he keep racking up wins? It doesn't make sense to me. But somehow he does, and somehow I come on this podcast, just like after the Ed Herman fight, and just like after when he was beating people up in Fight Nights Global, and just like after the OSP fight, I'm like, well, okay. But then there are times like Jan Blachowicz and Misha Cirkunov where I'm like, see, I told you. And it wasn't hard for these guys. What do you think about this one?
First things first, there's no lock that Glover Teixeira is going to win this co-main event. Okay? There's no lock.
He's going to win this fight and come help you build a deck again.
That's a good point. Very good point. Listen, the reason why I say that is because, not more than a week or two ago, we saw what happened in the UFC's women's strawweight division, right? Yeah. Anything can happen in MMA. If you're asking me on the streets of, mean streets of Stouffville, Ontario, make a pick, Glover Teixeira, Nikita Krylov, you damn right I'm going with Glover Teixeira, not because I think the guy's an absolute awesome dude. I just look at this on paper and think to myself, Teixeira's going to knock this guy's brains out, and if he doesn't, he'll tap him out, right? And I don't care if Glover Teixeira is 75 years old, right? He's just got old man strength, old man power. The heart of a lion just won't go away. And Krylov is another guy that to us is unpredictable. We don't know who's going to show. You see so many holes in his game. The Sean Ross Sapp book of holes in games, and it's there, right? And Krylov can surprise us both. Let's not kid ourselves. But on this fight here, paper versus paper, I got Glover Teixeira all day, every day.
Yeah, I do too. Tell you one a lot tougher to pick. Justin Gaethje a -190. Donald Cerrone a +165. This rounds out my I got 5 on it. Donald Cerrone +165. Glover Teixeira +100. Probably Uriah Hall +180. Not wide gaps by any stretch, but you also have a couple of decent, more valuable ones in Andrew Sanchez and Ryan McDonald. But man, Donald Cerrone, I'm surprised that that it's not a little bit closer, like maybe a +110, a +100. Donald Cerrone is an exceptionally well-rounded fighter. Justin Gaethje subscribes a bit to the old Chuck Liddell school of MMA, where he's got really good wrestling, but he'd rather stand up and punch you in the face. And he's got that low calf kick that can change your life. It can completely change everything, Joe. Gaethje, after losing 2 in a row, has stepped up and beat James Vick and Edson Barboza back-to-back. And Donald Cerrone looked like he was done at the elite levels. Looked like it after Darren Till. Looked like it after Leon Edwards. He came back. He beat Mike Perry, Alex Hernandez, Ali Quinta, all great names. The Tony Ferguson fight, I would have loved to have seen that happen again. It didn't. This is a pretty good consolation, though. How do you think this one's going?
I think it's too early for Donald Cerrone to be fighting again.
Yeah.
That's always been
fair.
his. When he loses fights, generally speaking, it's because he's taken fights too quickly. I'll never forget when Greg Jackson told me a long time ago that run that he had at one point. It was like insane. It was to the point. I'm trying to go back and look at when it was. I think it was WC 51. Jamie Varner, then Chris Hordesky, then Paul Kelly, then Wagner Rocha, then Charles Oliveira, then Dennis Seaver, and he was just fighting like fight, and then he ran into Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
And Nate Diaz pushes the pace. And then, he got back on track, took out Jeremy Stevens, Melvin Gillard, and did take some time off, but then ran into Anthony Pettis, took a body kick, and that'll shut anybody down. But it got to the point where if Donald doesn't fight as consistently as he wants, he does better. He's coming off a TKO stoppage versus Tony Ferguson.
And we thought his orbital was broken.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, exactly. So that was in June. I know it's September right now, but it's a quick turnaround, in my opinion, for a fighter. I know Donald Cerrone's special and stuff like that. But you take a look and Justin Gaethje's coming off a murder of Edson Barboza.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was a first round, 2.5-minute drubbing in March. He's had time to recover from that. His body's electrical system has been able to shut down, relax, and get some training in there. Okay? I'm going with Justin Gaethje in this fight. As much as I hate it, well, I like both guys. Don't get me wrong.
I think it's a safe bet.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.